Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Backend Stuff, episode 1 in Elixir Basics. What we're going to be doing today is just, a big macro view of what Elixir is and why you'd want to use it as your backend language. And then we're going to get it up and running and installed on your machines today, too. So we're going to walk through all of that. Let's go ahead and pull up a web browser, and you can see I have one open already, and go to elixir-lang.org. And right at the top, you can see a short little description that Elixir is a dynamic functional language for building scalable and maintainable applications. Awesome, right? I don't want to just sit here and talk at you, because most video tutorials, they'll just dive deep and just talk your ears off. I want to just start doing stuff, and we can talk about Elixir and why it was created as we're waiting for stuff to install. So let's go ahead and just click on the install up here in the top. And now, so the easiest way to install this, I'm on a Mac, by the way, so everything I'm doing is going to be Mac related, but no big deal. If you're on Windows, just click on Windows and it talks you through step by step how to do it. It's super easy. But so the easiest way to do it is just to install Elixir with Homebrew. And if you don't have Homebrew installed, we can walk through that as well. The problem with just installing one version of Elixir, like especially in my case, I operate a dev shop. So we have multiple projects that we're always working on. And for whatever reason, some projects might be on older versions of Elixir and Erlang. And for that reason, you want to use a version manager. So we're not going to install it this way. We're going to install it with a version manager. And we can find those, let's see, right here, compiling with version managers. And I like asdf because it allows you to use different Elixir versions and Erlang versions. So we're going to go ahead and walk you through installing with asdf. Now, if you don't think you're ever going to work on multiple Elixir projects, just do it. Just install one version. It's way easier. But back to asdf. Let's go ahead and pull that open. I'm going to find, so we can find their docs right here at asdf-vm.com. All right, so we are going to use Homebrew to install asdf. I'm not going to install Homebrew because it's already installed on my computer, but I'll show you what you need to do. So let's see, if you do install Homebrew on Mac, and if you're on a Windows, Google that as well. So the missing package manager. All right, so to install Homebrew, you simply just need to copy and paste this line right here. Let's see if I can, so that right there, you can tap that, it'll copy it. All right, nice and easy. So copy, and then let's go ahead and open our terminal. And you're gonna just paste it, hit enter, and run through the steps that you need to do. All right, so really easy. And we're done, right? So if you go into your terminal and you type in brew -- version, you'll see a version number, right? And then you know that it is installed properly. So let's go ahead, now that we have brew installed, let's go ahead and install asdf. So we're going to just copy and paste that for us because we're doing Homebrew. All right. So let's go ahead and get this downloaded. And in our terminal, copy and paste brew, or just type brew install asdf. Super easy. All right, and now it is downloading asdf. And as it's doing that, let's talk about some things. So Elixir, oh, that was way quicker. We'll talk about it anyways. So Elixir was created by a guy named Jose Balam in 2012. And his background was he was a Ruby developer. So syntax for Elixir is very similar to Ruby. So if you're a Ruby developer, you're going to find it very similar, and you'll probably love it right off the bat. And the cool thing is, so it's based off of Joe Armstrong's Erlang, which was originally created for telecommunication industry. And so basically Elixir syntax is a lot more approachable than Erlang. It's easier to use. Now, it is not just a different syntax built on top of Erlang. It is its own modern language, and it has just way more features that Erlang kind of lacked with. So the goal behind Elixir was to create a high concurrency and low latency language. And for that reason, it leverages the Erlang VM for running low latency, distributed, and fault tolerant systems. And so the Erlang VM, also known as Beam, so if you want to look into that a little more, go Google what Beam is, and you can do a full deep dive. But like the cool thing is with Elixir is it's just made to handle large data volumes. So its concurrency allows several computations to be executed at the same time instead of sequentially. Because of the concurrency, the speed and capabilities that Elixir has, telecommunication, e-commerce, and the financial industry has adopted Elixir very quickly. Okay, and with that being said, let's get back to installing Elixir. Now that we have asdf downloaded, we're at step number 2. We just downloaded it with Homebrew. Now we have to just add it to our shell. So when our computer boots up, it runs a script to run asdf for us. So depending on what you're running, if you're running bash and git with Mac OS or bash and Homebrew. So since we've installed Homebrew, we're going to be either bash and Homebrew for Mac OS, or we're going to be ZSH and Homebrew. So if you're running Catalina, most likely you are using ZSH. And we need to add the asdf script to our ZSHRC file. So all we have to do is copy and paste this, and it will add it to that, that file for us. It'll add this path, and I can show you where that goes in a second. So we're going to go ahead and copy and paste that. Since we are on Catalina, we're using ZSH and Brew, okay? So now to install it, basically it calls a script, right? It's adding a path to a script that gets called when our shell terminal boots up. So hit enter, that got added. So now if we vim into our ZSHRC, you see a lot of uncommented code, or you see a lot of commented code. So wherever you see the pound sign here, or hash tag, whatever you want to call it, that code's not getting called. But you'll see things like this right here. I'm using oh my ZSH. You can see the theme I'm using. All those are uncommented. And where we're going to find what we just added where our ASDS install script is. So this will get called and start running every time we open our shell. All right, and let's quit out of this, Q exclamation point, so nothing gets saved. And now that that is added, now we have to install Erlang and Elixir, because we need Erlang for when we are compiling our Elixir code. So for that, let's see, let's move on to our next step. This runs us through installing Node.js. So we don't want that. Let's find some other plugins. Here we go. Erlang. If you didn't see what I did, I went up to the top in the toolbar here, or the menu, I should say, and found Erlang and tapped that. And then it took us to the install. All right. I'm just reading through real quick because I haven't done this in a while. And here we are. So before we can install asdf, let's see, if you're running Ubuntu, we're just going to go down to OS X. And this, all right, so we need to install AutoComp first. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, and I already had it installed. If you run that and it says you already have it installed, great, we can just move on. Now we can go ahead and just add the Erlang plugin. So below here, do asdf plugin add Erlang. And this will download and install, nice and easy. All right, and then let's go ahead and install Elixir, and we can find that. All right, so the plugin unzip needs to be installed. So we can do that. We can do that with Brew. We don't have to do this apt-get. So let's go ahead and install that. So go ahead and do brew install unzip. Okay, and I already had that installed as well. So if you don't, yours will just go and install, which is fine. And now let's do asdf plugin add Elixir. All right, now we added Elixir. And now we want to add a specific version. So I think we should just use the most current one, since we're just starting off and we're just installing. So if we do asdf install Erlang current, I think that is what we'll do. That is not right. Oh, asdf install Erlang current. No typos this time. All right, and so that'll grab the, it might be latest now that I'm thinking about it. I think it's latest. I want to see it. There we go. Now it's downloading the latest Erlang version for us. And as we're waiting for that, let's talk about like what a functional language is. What does that actually mean? In functional programming, we can't modify a variable after it's been initialized. With this, it just makes it easier to maintain state throughout the runtime of a program. Once we create a variable and it's set, we know it can't be changed anywhere else. So the variable can never be changed. So that kind of gets into like the fact that Elixir is also an immutable language. This means that it won't mutate or change values, kind of what I just said. Instead, the functions that you call will only transform values and return a value. So that means you have no like bad side effects. When you pass in an argument, you always get the same thing back. And then that way, like, you can never change local or global variables when a function is called either. So all your variables throughout will always be set to what you expect them to be. And if you want to change them, you can pass parameters into functions, and they simply just get transformed by that function, and then it returns a new value. So you can't just reset a variable. It makes it a lot easier for keeping track of your data and not having any messy global variables that you can kind of run into with object-oriented programming. All right, and our Erlang is now installed. So now let's go ahead and install Elixir. So we're going to do the same thing, asdf install Elixir latest. And now that's downloading. Oh, that was much quicker, which is nice. Okay, so let's type source tilde / dot zshrc, and that is just going to rerun that script, which will initialize asdf, and then we can just verify that Erlang is installed with which, and it is, there it is. And then we can also verify that Elixir is installed with which. And there we go, they're both installed. Okay, now we have to set the version we want to use. And you can do this globally or locally to a directory. So if you had multiple projects all running on different versions, you could do it directly in that project's root folder. And that would be just, you do asdf local Erlang, and then whatever version number Erlang, and then like 23.2.5, whatever that version is. Or you can set it globally for, so if you don't specifically want to set a version for a project, we can just have a global version. So you would just do global Erlang, and then I'm going to just type latest. I think this will work. And then asdf global Elixir latest. Perfect. And then if we type in, so that adds the version we want to use to a directory called, it was a hidden directory called tools version. And now I think if I just do asdf list. Yeah, cool. So asdf list, now it actually shows that Elixir 1.13.4, and then we also have Erlang 25.0.3 being used. And with that being set, we should now be able to see Elixir -- version. And there we go. So Elixir 1.13 is being used. And there we have it. So using a version manager, we now have Elixir and Erlang installed, which is awesome. And in our next video, we will dive into creating a project.